The next category we're going to look at are the existentials, and this one I have a lot to talk about on this, so pay attention, okay? Existentials, right? And these, unlike the first one with the location, existential answers the question ha'in, right? Which means where, right? And you should know what ha'in implies, right? But most likely it's going to answer asa because this asa is, again, taking the place of ha'in lately in Cebuano as this language is evolving. This is one of these characteristics that is changing in the language, okay? It's kind of like, when I mean language is evolving, I mean like the Dutch language, for example, is starting to lose its genders, right? So now you're going to have like no genders soon, but that's just one example, right? Such as the English language lost its genders, Dutch is slowly losing the genders in the nouns. But yeah, this is one aspect of Cebuano that is slowly changing, right? And there's many more, so pay attention because this is crucial. It expresses existence in just existence. So these are just existentials, right? They express existence as an existential word, right? There is just something simply, for example, something just exists for just existing. It exists for existing. All right? That should be a no-brainer because if someone is talking about something existing, it just exists. It's just there. Just there. And you should know what those are, okay, right? I want to talk about na'a though. So um, na'a is again like with asa. Na'a is taking the definition of all of these plus these as well. Mai and aduna or duna, right? Except for the negative wala, and we'll talk about that, right? So na'a, this column is slowly starting to take all of those definitions. Okay. However, everything else here exists, right? In the standard dialect, that's how it is. It all exists and it all should be used. But in colloquial speech and in other dialects, you won't hear most of these other words being spoken, right? And they'll all mostly be replaced with na'a, okay? These four existentials have an implied location. That's why, again, you should already know what the H1s and T's and all that stuff mean, right? Depending on how distant it is to the speaker or the listener, right? And again, I'm not going to go into that because you should already know that. But I do want to talk about this column here. So these three words have no location. Unlike these, they express existence with no location. These words here, however, express existence with a location. How far and how distant is it to the speaker? With these three, they have no location. They're just, when you hear them in conversation, they just mean, okay, something exists. We don't know how far away it is or how close it is. It just exists for, again, simply existing for existing, right? It exists in existence. The first word, mai, is actually a borrowed word from Tagalog, and that is just what it is. It's a borrowed word from Tagalog, and it is similar to how duna works, or aduna, again, depending on the dialectal difference. Aduna and mai, they work the same way. Wala, however, wala is the negative form of all of these. So if somebody asks you a question using all of these 6 words and it doesn't exist, wala is your only negative option. So wala maintains that negative existence word. It also, we already talked about wala in verbs in negation, but in existence, we talk about wala as a negator as well. So it functions as a negator in existence and as a negator in verbal actions, right? But here, since we're talking about distance and existence, we are going to focus on the existence side. Wala expresses existence through non-existence, or through negating the existence and denying that it ever existed, if any of these 6 words are used. In these and mai and aduna, right? And again, these just express no location whatsoever. So again, when you hear them, they're just existing for existing. Now, I want to talk about this ang and this irregular e prefix, right? We talked briefly about this in the beginner series, right? And I'm going to talk to you more about it. All of these, so all of these location and existence categories will take e, okay? So again, it depending on the ending, you can either take ang or e, but all of the location and existence categories will take the e postfix or the e suffix, right, as an affix. So it's ang, but it changes to e when it gets affixated to these existential and location categories, right? And we also discussed how this e postfix can also take the can also affixate itself to certain enclitic particles, such as the na and pa, and it can also affixate itself to certain question words, right? Interrogatives such as kinsa and unsa, right? But this postfix can also will also affixate itself to all of these words, right? So remember for the location from the previous video, right, we have diri, right? E, since diri ends in an e, you're mostly just gonna have to use ang with that, right? So you don't elongate the vowel diri, right? No. And that's why sometimes dirai is used, dira, and then the e prefix, so that way you can show or you can pronounce the actual e ending. Same with dinhi, right? Dinhi ang, instead of dihi, it's weird. Dinhi, you'll say dinhi ang, right? Diri, diray, right? And again, sometimes this diray can also be with a dinha category, or I guess dinha definition, right? Speaking of which, dinha will be dinhay and dito will be ditoy, okay? Adiay, ani ay, right? Anaay and atoay, right? My, again, it just stays the same because my is a borrowed Tagalog word, and that just whatever. I'll talk more about my later. Duna or aduna makes it so that it's adunay, and wala makes it into walay or y. Again, if you shorten it, y. This my, however, is a Tagalog borrowed word, right? And even though it's a Tagalog borrowed word, it made its way into the Cebuano language, so now it is considered a Cebuano word or a part of the Cebuano language. This is normal with other borrowed words too, especially borrowed words from English and Spanish, right, that made their way into the language. They are now a part of the Cebuano language. So with my, even though my is a Cebuano word, it has roots, or it has its roots with the Tagalog language. Now, since it got borrowed into Cebuano, we keep the same definition that my has, right, which expresses as existence. However, we don't affixate this ang to it. My just remains as my by itself. So this video was just a short video to explain how existentials work. I will again make another video for the examples of these existentials, okay, and how some of these existentials play a role in with other existentials too. And it's also to show you that things are changing around, or things are slowly evolving in Cebuano, so you should be well aware or made aware that things might not go as planned as what you think they are in Cebuano. So I guess be aware about that, because some speakers will probably never use some of these words, and you'll probably wonder why. And then you'll understand why, okay? And some speakers aren't aware that that these changes are happening. So here is your chance to prove them wrong. And again, when I also mean by changing in the Cebuano language, some of these existential question words like diin, hain, and asa will also change according to the aspect of the verb, whether it's incepted or incepting, completed, started, began, whatsoever, and with the conjugated verb affix, right? With the affix of the verb. So again, it's gray area that is it's gray area that things are just moving around, right? So when something might be said wrongly, it's probably assumed correct, right? When something is said correctly, it's probably assumed wrong. So again, don't just take this with a grain of salt, right? Because this is what I'm teaching you is just a guideline to help you.